Hello and welcome to tour of QGIS. This video is designed to just give you a general understanding of where different buttons and features are within the software. So when you open QGIS, your screen should look pretty similar to how you see it looking now. If you've moved things around when you've worked in Q in the past, it might look slightly different, but this is more or less what it should look like. So I'm going to go over just some basic features that you will have when you look at your screen. You'll have your canvas, which you can see here. This is where you'll do your data analysis and where data will be added to when you do add data into the program. You have panels, which are generally nested on the left-hand side. You have toolbars, usually around the top and sides. You have your status bar on the bottom and your menu on the top. So I'll go in a little bit more detail of the buttons that you'll find. If you do have a panel that gets, or a toolbar that gets moved, you can right click into the toolbar and see all of your panels and your toolbars listed, and you can turn them on and off. The ones that are currently turned on are the most common, the ones that you'll use on the most regular basis, but of course you can edit that as you see fit depending on your personal preferences. Also, panels and toolbars can be moved around, so you can reposition things, and you can also nest them so that they have tabs. All depending just on your personal preference. So next I want to talk to you a little bit about panels. And the most popular panels are the browser panel and the layer panel, which you see right here. There's many different ways to add data in QGIS. I personally prefer the browser panel. I think it's very simple just to be able to come and navigate to your data. Especially if you're like me, so most of my data that I work on in one setting would be all stored in the same folder. So once you have your data in the same folder, it's nice to just navigate to that folder and be able to work out of it. Of course, I have mine like very nested. But I also just like it because it's a simple drag and drop. And you see that when you drag and drop the data into the canvas, it also shows up in your layers panel. But before we do go into the layers panel, I want to show you just a couple buttons that I work with. So this identify tool does show you the metadata about the data that you have selected. So that's a nice button. And then also this collapse button. Like I said, usually most of my data that I'm using is all in the same folder, so I don't commonly have to switch between folders. But if you do, it's nice to just be able to collapse everything back to a closed position. Once you have data open in your canvas, then you'll be frequently working in your layers panel. So you see here that I have populated places as these blue dots, and the lighter blue polygons are my countries. I can turn those on and off by selecting these boxes. I can open the layer styling dock. This is where I would come, for instance, to change the color of any of my items that are in my map. Edit. Oops. You can edit the labels. So this is how you customize your data. Again, I'll do a future video on the layer styling panel, but for now I just want you to see that you can locate it here in your layers panel. You can create groups. So if I just call this like tour, you'll see that you can nest your shapefiles into groups. So then you can just turn on and off whole groups. That's really nice if there's perhaps several layers that you want in the file, but you don't necessarily want to be actively working with them or using them. You can just kind of hide them with a group, which is nice. You can also filter. This is a button that you can use to write expressions for selecting features in your shapefiles. I'm not going to get into all that right now. Those are things that will be in future videos. So I'm just trying to give you a really basic overview for now, and then you can remove selected layers, or you can also just right-click them and remove them that way. And that's another thing when you're working in Q, is there's multiple ways to do everything. So you might know one way that you prefer, somebody else might prefer another way. But so there's multiple ways of going about achieving different goals here. So moving on to toolbars, you have some of the standard toolbars would be your project toolbar. These are just your standard document functions. You have your map navigation toolbar. You've got your attribute toolbar. You have your, actually your attribute toolbar would stop right about here. This guy at the end, that's actually your help toolbar. And your manage layers toolbar here. So within your project toolbar, you just see new document, save document, open document. Those are pretty standard. You do have new print composer and your print composer manager. When you're working in Q, when you're ready to then move on from the data analysis part and actually go into creating your finished map, you would actually create a new print composer, which I'll show you how to do in a few minutes. But this is where those buttons are located. Map navigation tools, these are just various ways of moving your data around within your map. So you see things like the pan, you have your zooms, you can click in on zoom things, you can also draw like a square to zoom to. Zoom out, you can zoom to full, brings you just to the full extent of your data. You can go backwards to previous views, forward. You can create bookmarks. So let's say I want to zoom to Madagascar. Okay. I could create a bookmark. And then, okay, so prior I had made like a South America bookmark, so I can click on South America, I can click back to tour, it brings me back to Madagascar. So bookmarks are really convenient. You see it popped up my spatial bookmark panel automatically. I don't really need that, so let me close it. So your map navigation toolbar just provides movement within your canvas. Your attribute toolbar allows you to work with the attributes of your data. Go back to a full zoom. So you have your identify tool, so if you click on any of your features, it'll give you the information. So make sure you have it selected. So you can click on any of your items. Canada, Brazil, and so forth. Make sure that it is selected, otherwise the identify doesn't really pick it up. So you can also select features. So you can select by dragging and drawing. You can just select by clicking. So if you want to select, let's say, features in both layers, you can select both of them. You can write expressions, so you could, for instance, do hypothetically select populated places with a population over X or under X, or so on and so forth. This button here allows you to clear your selections. Here's where you open your attribute tables. Again, multiple ways to do this, so you can open your attribute table for your layers via this button, or you can actually come and right click on them and open the attribute table. So that's another example of multiple ways of doing everything. Field calculator, statistical summaries, measure line. I'll make more videos going into details about all these different buttons, but this is just so you're familiar with where they're located. This is your help, so if you click this help contents toolbar, it'll actually open up a QGIS website that kind of goes into more explanation about different things that the software can do. It allows you to troubleshoot. And then you also have your Manage Layers toolbar here on the left. So this, like I said, this is commonly used to just add data. I prefer to use the browser panel and just drag and drop my data, but you're certainly able to use these buttons as well. So you have for vectors, rasters, delimited text layers. Those are probably the most common types of files that are added to Q. So at the bottom you have your status bar. Your status bar shows you things such as the coordinates where your mouse is hovering. It shows you the scale, so it tells you the current scale that you're at. You can also zoom to other scales, which I did that, just took me to what would be the ocean. So let me go back to full zoom. You can magnify by percentages. You can rotate the data in your map. This button here shows you what your current projection is. You can select this button and it'll take you to your project properties, which is just the properties for the entire project that you're currently working on. So you can come in here and change projections and coordinates and layer styles. And then also here you see messages pop up into this panel. So your log messages panel. So you can see the results of when you have different things processing or different plugins that get added. Okay, so the last thing that I want to talk about before we move on to Print Composer is the menu. So your menu basically shows you different ways of accessing everything else I just showed you. Exports, editing. The one thing I really want to hit on for now with the menu is the plugins. So there are other features that have been developed for QGIS that you have to actually install plugins. So you have to know which, so if there's a feature that you want to add but you don't necessarily know what it is, a good Google search can help you identify which plugin you actually need to install. But you just come to plugins, manage and install. Many of them are already installed. It's just a matter of actually turning them on. So just give that a minute to open up. Just takes a few moments. But you see you have your installed plugins, you have your not installed. There's tons of them. New plugins are developed all the time. So again, it's just a matter of knowing which ones you need, which is the more you work in Q, the more familiar you'll become with the different plugins. And we'll talk about some of them specifically later on. So now I want to go to Print Composer. So if you hit this new Print Composer, you can create a new one. So I'll just call this Tour for now. So similarly to when you're not working in Print Composer, you have your canvas, which is just the general area where you'll be working. You have panels, which are located on the right. You have your toolbars on the top and the side, and your status bar on the bottom, and your menu on the top. So that's pretty familiar. Like I said before, the main difference is when you're in Print Composer, you're not so much working on your data analysis, it's more of actually finalizing your map. So, in your panels, you have items, which shows you what's currently in your Print Composer. So let me just go ahead and add a new map. So when you add a new map, it pretty much just, it's a data frame that shows you what you have when in your canvas while not in Print Composer. So now you see that map 0 has been added. And I guess I might as well talk about some of the toolbars before I talk about the panels. Okay. So if we're going to talk about the toolbars, let me show you. You have your Composer toolbar, which is right here. You have your navigation toolbar. A lot of these are, I think that's very similar to what you would have in non-print Composer view. You have your actions toolbar. You have your atlas toolbar and your toolbox toolbar. Here going down. Okay. So your Composer toolbar, again, these are pretty much your standard document processing buttons, save, open, and so on. You can make new print composers, you can duplicate them. Here's how you export. So if you once your map is finished, you can export it as an image, you can export it as PDF, SVG. You can undo changes. These are just some basic typical buttons. Here you have your zooming, full zoom, zoom in, refresh. Here you can group and ungroup items. These are very helpful. I group things all the time, just to make my life easier, I suppose. You can lock and unlock selected items so that if you don't want them to get accidentally moved somewhere else, it kind of locks them into place. This is how you send different features in your canvas forward or backwards. Bring to front, send to back, so on. You can align items in your map with this button. So those are your action toolbars, and it basically just allows you to arrange items on your finished map. And then you have your atlas toolbar, which allows you to have an overview of an atlas. An atlas is basically just like a multi-page map. But your toolbox toolbar is what you'll really be using the most. So this, again, is like I showed you before, you add your new map. You can add another one. So you can have like a picture-in-picture effect. And then this button here allows you to select and move around your items within your map, resize them. This button allows you to move item content, so if you select sorry, my computer's freezing up. Oh, sorry about that. I had a little freezing. So you can see here that I'm actually moving the data within the map frame and the data frame. You can scroll in and out. So you can see, like here, if I want to zoom in on India, I can zoom into India. I'm not really actually trying to make like a finished map, just trying to show you where the different buttons are. You can add image, you can add labels or titles. So just add text. I'll show you how to change that text in a little bit. You can add a legend. Add your scale bar, you can add your arrow, so I actually want my arrow to go up, there we go. So if you want, draw your arrow the direction you want it to shape. Let me go ahead and just get that one out of here. So, like I said, this isn't supposed to be a perfect map, it's just so you get the general concept. Clearly this is not like a finished map in any stretch of the imagination. Okay. So now that we at least have a few items just thrown on here, I can show you kind of what some of these panels do. So if you're in items, it allows you to turn on and off the visibility. So turn your legend on and off. You can turn your title on and off, the map on and off. You can lock things so that they can't get moved around. Then command history just shows you what you've done, basically. So let's say you want to kind of, in a sense, go back in time, you can just click on items in the past, and it'll bring you to different moments of changes that you've made. Atlas Generator allows you to create an atlas, which again is just having multiple, like a multi-page map. Item properties, select something, is how you actually go about changing the items and customizing them. So instead of saying QGIS, I could say tour of QGIS. Can change your font, you can change the color, change the alignment, the size. So this item properties is really what allows you to kind of customize the items in your map. And then to change the items, all you have to do is select them. So if you're trying to customize your text, you select it. If you're trying to customize your legend, you select it. And I'll have future videos more specifically how to actually use the custom item properties toolbars, panel, sorry. And then composition is basically what you would think of as like your print page setup. So you can change it to portrait, landscape, you can resize the page, export settings. So let's say this was finished. It's, again, clearly not. I would never recommend that map to anybody, but let's just say we're finished with it. You can export it as a PDF. Let's export it as an image. Export it as JPEG tour of QGIS. I'll just put that on the desktop. Okay. So that is a very general overview of a tour of QGIS. I hope it was helpful to you, just kind of orienting yourself within the software. And again, I'll have more videos in the future going more specifically how to use the different features and functions within QGIS. So thank you very much for watching this video and have a great day.